I am over the top happy this week. It's just crazy, something that I've been preaching about and shouting about for years now. Finally, the mainstream media has caught up with this and is actually reporting on something that I've been preaching about for a while now. Hi, I'm Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com and the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that. No apologies, I'm going to rant this week. I'm just going to go off. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit down the video. So if you're watching this anywhere but my blog site or even at my blog, this is going to be an edited down version. If you want the complete story about what I'm going to share with you here, this will be my first ever podcast. If you go over to shadowanyone.com/podcast, check it out, and this will be episode 1. But here's the thing that I'm excited about. For years, if you followed me, I've been talking about if you're an investigator, you have to leave your office. You can't just rely on computer work. You can't just rely on the telephone. You have to get up off your rear end and go out into the real world and actually do investigating. Hey, private investigator, do some investigating. It's not all online, and it's not all easy to get. And the Chicago Tribune and the reporter Jason Meisner with the Chicago Tribune just earlier this year put out a story that just is exactly what I've been talking about, revealing the existence of secret street files that the Chicago Police Department has. Now, this is not unique to the Chicago Police Department. You're going to find this everywhere, and this is why I've been so adamant about it for years. But these street files, as they call it, these are the documents, the primary documents, detectives' notes, original reports, things like that. And they are locked away behind, in locked, secured buildings, behind locked doors, in the filing cabinets. A lot of times those are locked as well. This is the real information. These are primary documentation that you just have trouble getting. And to be honest with you, good job, Jason Meisner, for jumping on this story. But there's actually a lawyer, Candace Gorman, has just struggled and to bring this to light. Good for you, Candace. Here's the thing. Other experts are coming forward along with me to talk about the existence of files that you just can't get any other way. And there's about 500 of these files, referring to the Chicago Tribune report, about 500 files located in 23 file cabinets that are in a huge fight with the Chicago Police Department on sometimes even whether or not they exist. Maybe, is that too far for me to go with saying that type of thing? But good job to Chicago attorney Candace Gorman for bringing this about. Here's what it is. The information that the defense attorneys get when they file for discovery in criminal cases, that is not always the information all the information that's there, and it's sometimes different from the original information that's out there. Gorman here has found in the 60 cases that she's been able to compare, what she's gotten to the street files that she's been able to get access to, more than 90% of these street files have information that's not in the defense file. And Candace Gorman says, I knew we'd find stuff missing, but I didn't think it would be this much. Well, let me tell you, as somebody who's been out and worked these cases a lot, this does not surprise me at all. Miss Gorman goes on to say, these little pieces of information can be so crucial to a defense attorney because you never know which witness could be the key unless you're able to track them down. And I'll tell you what, I have literally written the book on dirty tricks, 51 dirty tricks bad guys really hate. And this is not one of the dirty tricks that I talk about in there because it comes down to just basically lying. But, prosecution is not above hiding witnesses sometimes. I've seen this. I've worked one case in particular I can think of just like this, where they list a witness with no known address. That's it. They're on the witness list. They're on the discovery list. That's all the defense got. They did try using some online databases and didn't reveal everything for them. The records that were supposed to have been in boxes in specific areas of a warehouse had been removed. for post-conviction litigation or for other reasons. So even when these boxes were admitted to, the attorney had trouble finding them. They weren't where they were supposed to be. I will give this more up to neglect and just the way sometimes the government runs things. You know, they don't have to lay their hands on the file. The people have been found guilty. Now they're convicts. They're inmates. They know it's unlikely they'll have to pull these files again, and they just kind of get moved or shuffled. I can see that just from a neglect point of view, almost a negligence point of view. During one visit to the warehouse, the attorneys were able to locate only 8 of 20 files they had hoped to find. And by the way, the only reason they got access to these was by a court order, of course. Otherwise, they're not going to know about them. And the attorneys likened this to what they call a bureaucratic shuffle. Basically, kind of playing the idea that they're playing a 3-shell game with this evidence that people need to review their cases. This is not the first time this has come up. As you know, I've been over 3 years now online talking about this type of thing. I have, of course, my report. If you want to be a private investigator, give up unless you do these 3 things. Go over to shadowanyone.com on the home page. You can get that report for free. And one of the things I talk about is getting these records, going through public documents to find the truth that you're not going to find in other places. So, okay, now, as an investigator, how do you go about finding these things? How do you go about digging a little deeper? Let me give you a case study example. A case I worked, it was an auto accident, and there was a witness to the accident, and probably more than a witness, probably somebody who was involved maybe with throwing debris from a moving car, that kind of thing. And nobody knew who this was or where they were. And so I had to track this person down. And the way I did that was I just started digging. And I went initially to the first officer on the scene of the accident and interviewed or talked to the officer, who was very nice about this. And he knew that there was something else, and he knew that the person had a short name but couldn't remember what it was, and it wasn't in his notes, in his personal private notes that he keeps, that he takes. Let me back up. Officers do this, like private investigators. We take notes and then we write reports. And so he was able to look in his notebook, and he didn't have the name of this person who was in the other car. And of course, it didn't make it into the main report, but at least now I knew it was a short name. The detective the police officer on the scene was able to point me towards the detective who was assigned to this accident investigation. I go in and I interview that detective, who was completely and wholly uncooperative with me, but he did let that name slip. So shame on him for underestimating this schmo PI that shows up at the police station to talk to him. But he did let the name slip. It allowed me to further my investigation, and for the client. Again, if you just sit down at the computer, you type in, yes, you can get, maybe online, you can get a copy of the accident report. Do you think that tells the whole story? Not by a long shot. You have to go out there and talk to people. The officer who was on the scene, talk to the ambulance crew if they arrived. Talk to businesses around. Look if there's a bus stop, a school bus stop even. What time of day did this happen? You got to go out and really investigate. Forgive me, I'm going to try to stop ranting about that, but I do want to say, for investigators everywhere, learn your craft, use your craft, get out of your office and actually do investigations. If you are listening to the podcast and not the video, I'm going to wrap the video up here, but if you're listening to the podcast, I've got some bonus stuff I'm going to tuck on the end of it here. So, this is Larry Kaye with shadowanyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.